Yeah. Oh, I know. He sold it, but I don't know when they were taking over.
Somebody else in the house.
I better get a hold of him.
We're gonna changes to this, you sent it out last.
Yes, ma'am.
No, well, I gave you the most revised changes. We went over again on Wednesday, and then he changed it again. A couple really small things. All right, with the quorum being present, it's 5:30 now. I'll call the meeting to order. We've got an agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda? Any questions on the agenda? If not, I'll just turn it right over to you, Bill.
Okay.
Go over the parent survey first.
Yes, actually, I've got the results up here. Purpose of the board meeting this evening is to present to the board for information the reentry plan for Willow Springs School District for the fall 2020 semester. I know there's been all kinds of conversations out there. The media's been covering that all the school districts are looking at reentry plans, and I'm here to tell you there's not one reentry plan exactly like any other. Because every school district modified and developed their reentry plan based upon what the needs are of their community and the interests are of their community. We've also done a survey to get feedback from our parents in terms of what they think about going back to school. This is unlike anything anyone has ever experienced before, is trying to prepare for a go back pandemic and go back to school at the same time. So we're doing our very, very best to put together a plan that we believe is workable. Appreciate Matt made it to one of the meetings. Dean was able to make it to all three, so I appreciate the board's involvement in that. Sure, if you guys have any conversations, anything to add, feel free to do so in the process. We started this formal process about 3 weeks ago, and pretty much everyone in here is on the committee. Then we also had some other folks as well. We had support staff on the committee. Josh Owens was on the committee, and 3 teachers on the committee. So we had a total of 15 to 17 folks that were part of this process. It was very well attended, all three meetings that we had. Each time we had a meeting, we honed out the details, had a plan, brought it back, and looked at it again. Honed out the details, got a plan, brought it back, and looked at it again. Our last meeting was yesterday. I emailed to the board 2 different copies of the plan. So hopefully you had a chance to review the plan and you're not seeing it for the first time here this evening. That'll give you an opportunity to maybe ask some questions if you have some questions that you may have been thinking about even the first time you read the plan. It is a very inclusive plan, I believe. And I think that when it's all said and done, I'm comfortable with the contents, and I'm comfortable with where we landed in terms of preparation and making sure that we have that we're providing for the safety and health, safety, and welfare of our students and our staff. What I want to share with you first of all is the survey results. We did this via Survey Monkey. We had, I believe, 296 respondents. Not as many as I would have liked. We had it open for about 8 days. And so I would have liked to have seen more, but it's enough of a response to get a feel for where our community sits with this particular issue. And I will tell you, it's not unlike anywhere else because they're all over the board. You know, and I think in any community, in any state in this country, you're going to have the same conversation because there is no slam dunk on how to solve this. All right, so you'll see that in some of the results in terms of where our patrons are and our parents are as far as going back to school and what that looks like to them. So we asked a number of questions. I just have a few slides here. The first question that we asked, and some of you may have taken the survey, please answer the following if you have a student in elementary grades. If public health officials believe it is safe to allow in-person instruction, would you allow your elementary student to return to school this fall? All right. Anything in the red, the orange, or the green is they would be willing to send their child back to school. There might be some concerns, some comfort level issues, but they would be willing to send their child back to school. Blue is not at all comfortable with that. So if you add all these up, we have roughly 29, about 77% of our parents of elementary students saying they plan on sending their child back to school, although there might be some concerns. Right? We have 16.9% who said no. They're planning on not sending their child back to school. Now, as we go through each school, kind of compare each one. All right, because it's interesting that from school to school what their thoughts are. Did the same thing, asked the same question for the middle school. 46.9% comfortable with minimal or no concerns, 17%. Some are comfortable with concerns, 10.2% somewhat comfortable. Add all those up, 27 is about 73%, 74%. We have 21.1% of our middle school parents who said that they're not at all comfortable sending their child back to middle school this year. And then high school. We have 50.7% who are comfortable with minimal or no concerns, 18.4% who are comfortable with concerns, 15.1% somewhat comfortable. So you add all those up, it's about 83, almost 84% of our high school parents feel pretty good about sending their kids back to school. We have 14.5% who do not feel comfortable at all. And this was just completed yesterday. Any comments, questions on that? And I will say that these numbers are another slide I'm going to show you here in a second that combines them all together. These are very, very similar to what other school districts' results are as well. All the districts that I've talked to the SEA students that have done surveys such as this, they're all around the 75 to 80% of folks that plan on sending their kids back to school. Anywhere from 15 to 20 who are not, or they're waiting until the start of the school year. So the next question we asked them was point blank, do you intend to send your children to school this fall? 67.5% said yes. 26% at that time were uncertain, and the remainder, which would be 96%, 5 or 6% said no. They would not be sending their kids back to school. So if you garner from that, if half of the folks that are uncertain end up sending their kids to school, it's going to be right at 80%, according to the survey. Now again, when August 24th gets here, we'll see who shows up, all right? Because we'll see how accurate these numbers are. But they're very, very close to what other school districts are running as well. We also then asked them if on the previous question, if they said no or uncertain, please indicate the type of delivery option you would like, as opposed to the seated option. Most of them would like a hybrid model, which would have part of the time you're learning online, part of the time you're learning in school, and you stagger kids. About 40.6% of them. 35%, they just wanted online learning. Just no seated instruction at all. And then 8.9% said they were planning on homeschooling their kid. So that kind of gives you an idea of where that's at. Now, the reason this is important, and we've already shared this as part of the plan, is that we do have an alternative method of instruction that's built into the plan. Because we know that there may be some students who will not come back to school right now, at least not now, until their comfort level is where it needs to be. Or in the future, we may have to, if we get some positives, we may have to send some kids home. So we have to have another way to provide instruction to those kids while they're home. And we'll talk about the alternative method of instruction here in just a little bit. I have Chris Wagner talking about that. He's been working stringently on that with teachers. The next item that we were concerned about was with our parents that we wanted to find out is internet connectivity. We've talked about that a lot in here. You know, as a board, we've talked about it, and we don't really know the number. We know that there are some of our kids who have access to nothing when it comes to Wi-Fi connectivity. We know that they live in remote areas of our county or remote areas of our school district, and they may not have cell phone connectivity. They may not have Wi-Fi. You know, they basically have nothing. So it's going to be very, very difficult from an alternative method of instruction or distance learning to reach those kids, but we're putting a plan in place to do that. Out of that number, 61.3%, which I felt pretty good about, 61.3% said, yes, I have a reliable internet connection. All right, that's quite honestly higher than I thought it might be. Okay, so that's pretty good. 19.9% says, well, I have an internet connection, but it's not really that reliable. And I've been there before, and I still am, but that's okay. So when you look at it, at least 80% of our kids have something, right? So we're right at 16% saying, I don't have internet. I do not have a reliable internet connection, period. All right? So we got to figure out a way to reach those kids, because if you do the math, let's just say we have 80% of our kids who decide to come back, 20% who are concerned about coming back and say they wait. That's still a couple hundred kids that we're going to have to try to deliver instruction to them. We'll do that through distance learning and provide a method. But what we don't know is out of those 200 kids, how many of them fall in that category. And that's when we're going to have to deal with that when it comes up, when they enroll, and they decide, hey, we want to do the distance learning, then we need to sit down and figure out what it takes to make it happen. Now, alternative method of instruction, I need to clarify, doesn't always mean distance learning. All right? Now, we did the hard packets, okay? And I would say with minimal success. However, hard packets can still be used, but we have to build in a method of accountability to it. That means we send them home and we expect them back like every 2 days. We have a sit-down conversation or a communication between the teacher and the student and the parent. So that has to happen, even if we do that. And that's what, when it comes to funding, that's what DESE expects, if you have to have some type of extended school closure. They expect to see continued instruction and continued conversations between the school and the parent and the kid. And that has to be built into the system. Any questions about this? Is this about what everyone thought? Did you think it, is it higher than what you thought, lower than what you thought, about the same? You're smiling a little bit, Dean.
Excuse me. It's a little bit like asking, it's a little bit like printing out a survey to say, can you read? You know, they can't take the survey if they can't get online.
That's good, that's a good point. Now, some of them could have taken it as they were driving through Willow on their telephone.
Probably true.
So they could have done it that way, you know, but you're right, there's that catch-22 that you can't expect. So. We had some open-ended comments too. I just put down a few just to give you an idea of what some of the comments were. We had well over 150 to 200 total comments when you look at the internet and all that. One of the first comments was don't make them wear a mask. And one of the next comments, mask for sure. So you kind of see where we're at on that. Someone else said, my kids cannot return to school in person because of health reasons. The Willow Springs School don't have online learning. I found a connection. By the way, I just cut and pasted this in. So, you know, if Willow Springs School don't have online learning, I found Connections Academy for my kids to attend online that Willow Springs School would have to pay for if online school is not available at Willow Springs. Thank you. So that was a comment. We need to get back to normal as possible. We need to get back to as normal as possible. Exclamation point. If in-home learning is the route that is taken, both my husband and myself work, so our oldest has limited access to learning. Concern for lack of peer contact and interpersonal relationship development with solely online learning. Also a lack of motivation for physical activity and education with no in-person instruction and supervision. A lot of precautions would have to be put in place at this time to keep schools safe. The government is trying to control the people. Don't buy into their manipulation. So I thought that I had to add that one. But they're all, you know, and that pretty much, if you look at all the comments, they're all over the board. All right, there is no consistent message in terms of should we have school and what does that look like. But that's also the same thing that all school districts are dealing with right now. All right, that's why this plan is our plan based on getting together and doing what we believe is the safest thing for students and staff.
The one comment that sticks out the most to me is right there in the middle. If in-home learning is the route that is taken, both my husband and I works, or will have limited access to learning. That is an issue that we're gonna have to think through. There's so many families with two working parents that, you know, if we go to all virtual or all, in-home learning, if we have to close school down at some point, that's gonna be a real issue for some families.
Yeah, that is an
You
issue.
go to work all day and come home at night, and there's still stuff that has to be done, and now you gotta go try to teach little Johnny for a few hours.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue. Any other comments or questions about the survey? I think it gave us some insight into where our folks were. I think some of the things that we went with in the plan were right in line with what some of the folks were saying here. Other things, people asked for it, and we just didn't feel comfortable putting it in the plan. And so we'll kind of talk about some of those things. So some of the major considerations as a committee that we had to kind of talk through. Wearing a mask, that's probably the biggest one. Do we, don't we, do we require it? Or do we just recommend it, highly recommend it? Take your temperatures at the door, we talked about that at length. And what that looks like. Because everything that we talk about when it comes to school, we're based on operating school with kids coming to us, sitting in groups. Okay, that's how we're modeled. All right? And so all of this is new in terms of creating a new normal in terms of how schools operate. So what's it look like if you have to stop every kid at the door and take their temperature? You know? And then what happens if it's high? And mom and dad's already gone. You know, so there's issues to consider. Transportation concerns, we talked about that at length. Rob was involved in that, what that looks like when we transport as many kids as we transport. At the same time, maintaining social distancing. Meals, what does that look like? You know, have you ever been to lunch at the elementary school? They're packed in like sardines. There's not going to be a whole lot of social distancing going on the way we're doing it. So we have to find out a different way to do it. Sanitation procedures and supplies. We're really good at ordering sanitation supplies. We're just really not very good at getting them right now because they're all on back order and we just can't get them. We've ordered, I think, 4 electrostatic machines and they're hoping we might get them by September. You know, because everyone's doing the same thing. But we do have the supplies in place and we're working on the procedures to make sure that it gets done every single day. And we have an extra custodian who's supposed to be doing nothing but sanitizing. Personal protective equipment. You know, our nurses, Michelle is here, and our nurses are frantically ordering as much as we can. We have, I think right now, 3,000 masks that are available upon request. So we have that. We have, I think, 70 or 80 thermometers, infrared thermometers. And we'll explain to you how we're gonna use those here in just a few minutes. So we have to take a look at that. What do we have in line for that? Alternative methods of instruction. Chris will talk about that. Exclusion of students and return of students to school, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And there's a section in here under health protocols that talks about what happens if a student tests positive. Okay, what's the impact? All right, what's the impact for that child's siblings? What's the impact for that child and who that child has come in contact with? And what's our connection to the Howell County Health Department? What does that look like? So there's a section in there that talks about that, how many days they have to be out and so forth. And then finally, we talked about virtual connectivity. Facilities and I would be here tonight, but I'm working with the facility on getting hotspots purchased, putting access points in remote areas of our county. We're supposed to drive close to get an area to get online access. Maybe there's a church in the area, they can install an access point there. Then they just have to drive a mile down the road, go in, download their information. If they need a Chromebook, we will provide them with a Chromebook. You know, and then they can go home and do their homework. So there are options that we're looking at. So those are the major issues that we discussed over that 3-week time period. So what I want to do is just basically walk you through the plan. And I've asked all these folks to be here this evening because I know there's going to be questions. And there may be questions I can't answer. So I want them here because they're going to be on the front line as far as implementing the plan every day. And so they'll be able to answer a lot of the questions for you. So in the table of contents, first item that we have is the introduction. There might be, I think there's still some more plans over there if anybody wants to look at it. We have the introduction to the plan, basically a general statement about what our focus is, what we plan on accomplishing by having the plan. We point out the fact that our wherewithal, the way we're organized typically is seated instruction. And so we're still trying to find a new normal to see what this looks like, but we're most concerned about the health and safety of our students and our staff, and making sure everybody continues to receive an education. So I don't know if there's any questions about the introduction or not. It's pretty generic. So. Okay, safety and well-being. On safety and well-being, we developed 4 levels to determine where we are in this global pandemic. All right. Level 1 would be traditional school, pre-pandemic school. We're not there. All right. That is just regular school as normal. No changes. Just what we all are used to. Level 2 is where we will start on August 24th. Level 2 is all classes will take place in school buildings and social distancing to the extent possible will be followed. Extra cleaning and safety protocols for staff and students will be followed. There will be no restrictions on parents. There will be restrictions on parents, visitors, and volunteers in the building. Distance learning will be provided by the school district to those students unable to attend the seated school due to COVID-19. So that's where we will be on August 24th. If we have any other school closures, or if we have to separate a larger group of kids from school, then we may move to level 3. The level 3 would be a short-term school closure. Say we have to close school for 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Then we would move to level 3. Classes will take place for majority of students in alternative method of instruction or distance learning. What we were thinking about in this situation is we have the 16, 17, 18, 19% had nothing. It may be that we provide the distance learning to those kids who have access, and then we bring the other kids to our school in very small groups for seated instruction. So that would be something we could do under level 3, if we get to that point. And then level 4 would be similar to what we just came out of, extended school closure for everyone. And at that point then, we're looking at a combination of it's going to be distance learning or whatever we can do to continue to reach all of our kids. And that's where we were the last 7 weeks of school, this past school year. So, any questions about that? And this was developed just so everyone has a good gauge in terms of where we are in this whole situation. And we are starting at level 2. General expectations for parents. Basically, we want our parents to cooperate with us. Okay, we expect our parents to check their kids at home. We expect our parents to check their temperatures. If they're running a temperature of 100 degrees or higher, keep them home. We are even providing thermometers for families if they don't have a thermometer. Contact the school nurse's office. We can get you a thermometer that you can check your child's temperature with. But again, if they have a temperature before you leave the house, keep them at home. Or any of the other symptoms that are listed there that are connected, they could be connected to COVID-19. Teach appropriate hand washing, good hygiene techniques at home. Support us in that because we're going to be doing the same thing at school. Talk to your kids about not sharing things back and forth with other kids. No material sharing. We are not requiring masks to be worn by staff or students. Had a long conversation about that. And we had a meeting today, I had a superintendent's meeting with SEA, and none of them are requiring masks to be worn at this time. Ava may be doing it for staff, but no one else is doing it at all for students. Now, I heard today, I think West Plains might be.
5th through 12th.
5th through 12th. Okay. We talked about that at length, and the logistics of that was just overwhelming. You know, when you start talking about whether it's 1,300 kids or 700 kids, the enforcement piece alone, but just trying to acquire the number of masks that we would need is very, very difficult at best. And so we decided not to go that direction. And we're not requiring, but we do strongly recommend it. We also have a piece in here that if parents have children, and I believe it's the last bullet there, have children with health issues, they do need to consult their physician. Because their physician may have guidelines for them to follow when they come to school, and we will absolutely follow those guidelines. If a doctor says this kid needs to wear a mask, they'll wear a mask. And we're not going to tell any kid they can't wear a mask. We recommend that they do, we're just not going to require it. Same thing with staff, it's at their discretion. Any questions about that? I mean, that was a long conversation.
That's what, with us providing the mask, if kids do one.
Yeah. If we've got about 3,000 of them, if they request one, we'll give it to them. That's not a problem.
Was there any discussion about if, say we get a case or two and follow the protocol for those individuals, about the possibility of them moving to, requiring a mask?
No, we didn't talk about that.
Everybody else, I mean.
No, we didn't talk about that. We talked about if there's exposure, then they're excluded from school.
Right.
And the amount of time it would take for them to come back. But we didn't talk about if a kid just tested positive and all the other kids need to wear a mask in the class. Because quite honestly, if that happens, they're not gonna be in the class following it. Because if they're in contact with them,
Right.
they're gonna quarantine.
So my point is, if it's apparently becoming more common in the community, is there a point at which we want to continue to try to have seated school, but require a mask so we can possibly extend that before we have to go to a different level?
We might. I mean, just because right now we're not requiring it, if it gets to the level that it grows so quickly, we may have to go back and say, hey, we're back to wearing masks again. Or the health department may say, you guys need to be wearing some type of protection. Right now, they're not saying.
Do we need a set percentage point though? I mean,
A
like
percentage of what?
Mac was talking about though, so many kids have, when we reach 10%, 5%, whatever it might be, so it's already in place, already there.
Yeah. To me, that's such an arbitrary number. I think you're just gonna have to kind of roll with it and say, hey, we need to do something else right now because this isn't working. Part of the problem is they may not be positive, but that doesn't mean other kids haven't already been exposed.
And following health department guidelines would
Right.
help a lot there. I mean,
Yeah.
they would probably.
Yeah, I'd hate to put a hard and fast number in there and say, okay, once we hit 20%, we're going with masks. Because quite honestly, I don't know if we can get that. Because the masks that we do get, if they're the temporary kind, they've got to be changed. I mean, you got to change them every day. And if you get the kind that you make that are permanent, you got to launder them every day. You know, and that would be a tremendous responsibility to expect all the parents of our kids to make sure they launder their masks every day. So, any other questions about that? About general expectations for parents, or about wearing masks? Okay. Next item, general expectation for teachers. We are giving access to all of our teachers to an infrared thermometer that they can use throughout the day as necessary if they feel the need to do so. As opposed to checking temperatures at the door, we're asking our teachers that if they feel the need to do so, go ahead and check the temperature in the classroom. And then if need be, if they do have an elevated temperature, they can send that child to the school nurse's office. And the school nurse's office, they will start making the plans to send that child home. Okay? And so we are putting thermometers in our teachers' hands. They're also looking for other symptoms that they might notice. Talk to the kids about viruses, signs of illness. we're gonna constantly hit on good hand washing techniques. All of our classrooms have sanitizing dispensers. We're putting a sanitizing dispenser at the entrance of every door through all of our buildings. We're putting sanitizing dispensers on all of our buses. And really working with our kids on using them all the time. Just use them all the time, and what it means to wash your hands. And wash them thoroughly and do it the right way. Teach students what it means by social distancing. Make sure that we have adequate seating charts. We have to have a seating chart for all of our kids in all of our classes. And why is that, do you think?
So if somebody comes up positive, we know who they were sent by.
That's right. When the county health department calls and says so-and-so's positive, we better have a list of kids that are within 6 feet of them. All right, and so that's part of allowing us to do the contact tracing. That being said, just the nature of the way we do business, contact tracing is going to be extremely difficult for us. But we're going to do the best we can with that. A lot of this is about making sure that they're not congregating outside the classroom. We talked a lot with the high school folks. There's a Harvard study out that says that the social distancing deal, that the transfer of germs from one person to another, you have to be in sustained contact for 10 to 15 minutes. Typically, that doesn't happen when you're just passing each other in a hallway. So the point being is that this is going to require a lot of supervision, but at the middle school and the high school, you just need to get from point A to point B. All right, if the bell rings, grab your book and go. There's no standing in the hallway and talking, you know. And that's just going to take a lot of supervision and administrative responsibilities to make sure that happens. Any questions about anything that's on that particular sheet? We did talk about Chromebooks. When kids are using Chromebooks, they need to be cleaned after each time. So, and we have the resources, Josh owns that will find stuff that will allow us to do this.
There was some conversation that's likely to shorten the life of Chromebook, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, we did have that conversation. And if it does, we'll have to go buy a new Chromebook. Yes.
Caught the words you
It
did.
is what it is. All right, health and safety guidelines. Now, this is probably the biggest part and the most critical part. I've had a lot of conversations between Janet Newman and Michelle in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but concerning the CDC guidelines. And the CDC guidelines just continue to change all the time. They change from one meeting to this next meeting. We had a meeting one week, and by the next meeting, they already changed the guidelines. So we got to stay on top of that. There's a clause in here stating that, you know, this will be subject to CDC changes as we move forward. Basically, constant sanitation, constant cleaning. I've had several conversations with Chris Gillen, the Howell County Health Director, about the connection between HIPAA and FERPA. Because there's kind of an issue there. The school district, we follow FERPA. All right, so we have a legal obligation to protect the rights and the educational privacy of all of our kids. They follow HIPAA. They have an absolute obligation to protect the health requirements of all their people that they're coming in contact with. So somewhere, some way, we have to have transfer of information. And so we're trying to work on a document that a collaborative agreement between the school district and the Howell County Health Department where both is comfortable sharing information. Because if they have a positive case, and it's one of our students, they can call us up and they can say, you have a positive case. And we can say, okay, where was it? We can't tell you. Well, no, that doesn't work, okay? So on the other hand, if they call us, they're gonna need some contact tracing. So we have to work together on this thing. So we're trying to work on something that will close that gap and allow us to do that. He said he's waiting on guidance from the state health department in terms of what that looks like. But we will work closely with the Howell County Health Department on all of this anytime there's a positive. And Chris has been really good to work with. So we are changing water fountains. We're restricting all water fountain access, and we're going to go to bottle filling machines instead. And all students will be encouraged to bring a clear water bottle with them to school, keep it in school, and they'll fill up their water bottle when they need a drink. But we're not going to have kids drink out of the same fountain, drink out of the same hose, drink out of anything after each other. All right. And that you'll see some bills come across for that. That's not cheap. When we have to convert all our water fountains, we'll buy some new bottle filling machines. That's not a cheap proposition, but it's necessary. Again, kids, students can choose to wear a mask if they would like to do so. Staff at their discretion. We are limiting access to the buildings for visitors and parents. So for the indefinite future, we're not allowing parents to come in and eat with kids. You know, we're gonna stop our kindergarten mentoring program for a while. Because we just need to maintain, we need to control who's in the environment. And so we're gonna limit that as long as we're at level 2. The rest of this, probably the most important part of this section is if you go to page 8. That's the exclusion rule. And all of these are per CDC guidelines. Okay, if we have 3 categories, they're untested, all right, they're tested positive with symptoms or they're tested positive with no symptoms. Okay, so if somebody comes in, they receive the test, proven or disproven the presence of COVID, but have experienced symptoms, when all 3 of the following, they can return when all 3 of the following are met. They've had a fever, it was 72 hours, CDC changed that to 24. All right, so they have to be out 24 hours of not having a fever without any fever reducing agents. They have to do it on their own. So once they can do that for 24 hours, all of the symptoms have improved, and at least 10 calendar days have elapsed since the symptoms first started. When all 3 of those happen, then they can come back. Okay, per CDC guidelines. Tested positive with symptoms. If they have tested positive and they have symptoms, they may return when all the following are in place. Again, no fever for 24 hours. Again, 10 days since the onset of symptoms. Other symptoms have improved, and they have to have 2 negative tests in a row before they can come back. So all those conditions have to be met. So at the minimum, they're out 10 days for that to occur. And then finally, tested positive with no symptoms. They don't have symptoms, but they tested positive. They're asymptomatic. Again, 10 days, and they have to have 2 negative tests in a row, at least 24 hours apart. We decided to put number 4 in there that can trump the other 3. And that's if they take the kid to a doctor. And we get written permission from the doctor that it's okay for that child to come back to school. Okay? And that's the only condition that will be other than the first 3. Now, the part where this gets interesting is when you go to the next section and you have say you have a positive case. So you know that young person is going home, right, for 10 days. You know that. There are siblings in the home, okay? Say he has 2, 3, 4 brothers and sisters. They all must be quarantined as well for 14 days, okay? If they go back to the same home. Now, as Chris Gillen explained it to me, the way that works is the 14 days on the siblings does not begin until the first one is released. So when the first one does his 10 days and is allowed to come back to school, then the 14 days can begin for the other siblings. So they could be out as much as 3 to 4 weeks and not even half it, because they have to do it during the time of incubation, right? And that time they know is not until that first kid's been completely released from that. So that's the problem. That's why AMI is going to be really important.
Can those kids be diverted to another home?
That's a good question. All right, and I brought that up because during our Zoom meeting, I asked Chris, well then, not to use this scenario at all, but what if they send those other kids to grandma's house? Well, that's great, but then you're running the case, grandma's gonna get exposed. But they can't. As far as counting the days, if they're not around that sibling, then they don't have to wait for that kid to be released. Right? They can start right
So
from
they're
there.
14 days from the day they're separated from the sibling.
Correct.
The sibling's been
Correct.
cured.
The minute from the moment, as long as they're around that sibling, they don't start the 14 days.
Is there any verification of any of this quarantine?
Well, CDC guidelines, all
No,
this is,
I mean, if a kid's sick and we send them home and they say, oh yeah, they haven't been around, but grandma lives next door, and we're, is there any verification, or are we just taking people's word that they did?
Taking their word.
that they did do the test or
Well,
whatever.
that they did.
Lambs to the first
Separate
kid.
quarantine.
Oh, you gotta take their word for it, yeah, you don't know. I mean,
Lambs to the first kid that, okay, he was there, he sits there for 10 days and it starts over again. Who says that you don't get it back or however, and then you're
right back where you were. Yeah.
like a cold in the house, it just runs through the whole family, you know?
So the question that I have here is, on our end, who's tracking all that?
Who's tracking attendance?
Who,
Oh, like,
who's saying,
who's counting the
Billy
dots?
can come back
Okay,
today,
who's
Susie's
counting the
gotta come back on
dots? Well,
Tuesday.
ultimately, it's gonna come down to, well, between our school nurse's office and our building office. They're gonna have to track the days. You know, and so, yeah, between the school nurse's office, he's asking Michelle, who's gonna be responsible for counting the days to make sure that it's been 10 days before they come back.
We have a form that we're sending home every time we see a kid that is sick. We're filling this out with their symptoms, their vital signs. We're asking them questions such as, have you come in contact with anyone with symptoms that's on quarantine, someone that tests positive? Have you traveled to an area that has a high number of cases? Based on talking, getting history from the parent and the student, we're writing on that form when they can come back to school. We're making a copy of that and putting it in their file, sending a copy with the parent to take to the doctor's office. That way, if we are contacted by the health department, we'll be able to refer back and give them all that information.
And you're gonna fill the form out for the siblings as well?
Yes, if the siblings are excluded, they are at, CDC is being very, you want you to be very serious before you exclude siblings or even students. They're asking if they come in with symptoms, that you don't exclude them simply based on the symptoms. You have to get a history, you have to find out what their health history is, if they've traveled somewhere. And based on all of that, you will make your determination on whether or not they're excluded.
Is that what we read?
And that's the one,
That's
but
not
that's,
what we read.
but that's for those who have no positive test, but they're showing symptoms,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Right,
Untested.
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 So we're presuming that most people, when their child is at home with these symptoms, would probably go to a doctor and test.
Yeah.
Taking a lot of
That would,
mystery out of it.
that would be.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, it would be very helpful. Because then if they do that, and they take their kid to get tested, and they get the results back in 3 or 4 days, might be quicker than that, and they find out it's negative, then everyone can come back. The siblings who were excluded can come back because we verified that the kid was negative. So ideally, it would be great to go to a doctor to get tested. Ideally, it would be great if we had the capability to give the test at school. Our situation with the OMC clinic has changed, so we're not gonna have that ability, nor would I think we would have, even if it would have stayed the same with on-site and they would have seen that person. Now we're gonna go to a telemedicine approach, so that won't be possible now. But think about it though, if we knew that, and we had a medical professional on campus who could give the test, you know, and we could find out in a few days, that would eliminate a lot of this.
All right, so I'm trying to get what you said and what this is together. So if Billy comes in with symptoms, we send him home with a form to fill out, asking him if he's been to China.
No, we fill that out before they.
Okay, you fill that out. Assuming Billy can answer it, or are you talking to the parent?
We're talking.
Talking to the parent. Okay. So then we send all the siblings home, the whole family of 6, until the test comes back?
Based on if we see this kiddo, if we are pretty certain he has COVID, but we're gonna have to be very certain before we send siblings home. So we're gonna ask about symptoms, but we're also gonna ask about travel, if they've come into contact with anyone with COVID. And it's also gonna have to do with how many cases we have locally. So if we don't have very many local cases, it's gonna be pretty uncommon to see a positive COVID case in school. So we're gonna have to keep on top of that too. It's nursing judgment, a lot of it. We're not gonna have a cut and dry. You go home, you go home.
Well, one of the other things that we have to consider as well is that when the nurses see a kid, do you know how many students come into the nurse's office with a cough? You know? And so based on that, we're not gonna basically say, okay, you and your 4 siblings gotta go home until that cough goes away. Cause that's just kinda silly. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But there has to be a number of symptoms in play. Plus, we put a clause in several places in here when there's no other, no prior.
No other explanation.
Yeah, like, in other words, we may know the kid has asthma. We may know there's other underlying health conditions that may be causing that. That would allow us maybe to eliminate the possibility this is COVID, because we know this kid always has problems with this. And so we have that to fall back on as well. But Michelle's right, a lot of it's gonna be judgment. It's gonna be professional judgment on the part of the school nurses to do that. Because they're gonna be basically the ones that are gonna triage these kids when they come in. So. But I agree with Michelle, I hate to, just because a kid comes in with a fever, call Marty and say, we need the 2 high school kids to go home. You know, I mean, I don't know.
I think we just gonna use a lot of common sense.
That's not what the CDC is recommending for exclusion. They are not, they're wanting you to be very thorough in your history with the parent before you ever exclude a kid. Because consistently at the end of the year, last year, we were seeing 100 kids in the nurse's office a day. And a lot of those were exhibiting these symptoms listed. So if that are the case and we exclude every kid that comes in our door with those symptoms, we're gonna have to.
Right, within 2 weeks, we'll be empty.
Yeah.
Well, and let's think about another scenario as well. There may be a kid come in that is exhibiting some symptoms, and for some reason, we know that this kid was maybe someplace or around someone who tested positive. Well, that's a whole different scenario now. Because that's a conversation with the health department, because that might be a case where, okay, we know that they're in close contact, say this kid's grandmother tested positive. That would be probably an opportunity that kid and sibling probably need to go home. You know, but that's why we can't, it's not gonna be black and white, because every single situation is gonna be different. So we just do the best we can in terms of professional judgments. Questions? That's a lot of information, it's a lot of detail. And a lot of this is coming straight out of CDC guidelines. So, talks about self-quarantine if folks, if they come in contact with somebody, if they know that they knowingly came in contact with somebody who tested positive, they need to self-quarantine for 14 days. Likewise, if they go to an area that's considered to be a hot spot, they should probably quarantine 14 calendar days when they come back. District response to exclusion from school or self-quarantine. As soon as we become aware of a student or employee that may have COVID-19 or that has been excluded from school or recommended self-quarantine, we'll do a thorough cleaning of all the facilities in which that particular student may have been in contact with. We'll do that after hours, within 24 hours. If we can't, we'll do it during the day. We'll take care of it there.
Including any siblings that may have been sent home.
Any areas where they have been, yes. See, the most difficult thing is we're fighting an invisible thing, you know? And so you're just doing the best you can, not knowing for a fact whether, I mean, you hear research all the time. There was something on the news this morning about some lady that did this tremendous amount of research on this, basically saying that, you know, it's not as communicable as you think it is. Like they say outside, for instance, they tested all these doorknobs outside, people come and go, none of them tested positive. Because obviously it's sensitive to ultraviolet rays. So you're hearing all this information, so we're getting more information coming in as they become more familiar with it, but we just have to do what we can to follow best practice. Separation while in school, we've already devised a plan. If we do have a positive case in school, or if we are excluding somebody because potentially it could be COVID-19, we're going to isolate that child with symptoms. We're looking at that child going over to what used to be the OMC clinic. We have an extra room there, and we use that as an isolation room. One of the school nurses will follow that child, and we'll be there with the child during the time until the parent comes and picks that child up from school. And so we need to make sure that that child's in isolation. So, any questions on that? The next is just a flow chart, a protocol for surveillance, screening, triaging kids. If A happens, we're doing B. If B happens, we're doing C. Social distancing and operational protocols. You know, again, we're a school, we're going to do everything we can to encourage social distancing. And you'll see part of what we're doing with the meals and things on that side. We've already talked with the high school folks and middle school folks that are making sure kids get from one place to another. Having teachers, to the extent possible, social distance in the classroom. And when they do that, and DESE put out some guidelines, they said social distance in the classroom. If you can't do 6 feet, at least do 3. All right, so there's not going to be a magic formula that says we're going to keep every kid in the district 6 feet apart from each other. All right, but we're going to do the best we can to encourage our kids to social distance. They go straight to the classroom, they get to the building, they bring their backpacks, they can be brought, they're kept in the lockers at the middle school and the high school and have to go home each day. Again, water fountain usage will be restricted to bottle filling machines.
I got a question there, Bill. I know in high school, I know a lot of the kids, it seems like they pack their backpacks from class to class with them. Just take their, is that right, Marty?
That's correct, yeah, probably about half.
So if we're requiring them to leave all their stuff in their lockers, that means everybody's gonna have to go back to their locker in between?
No, they don't have to. I mean, that's not required that they leave it in their locker. They just need to, if they do, they need to take it home at the end of the day.
Okay, all right.
If they're taking it around with them, then that's.
Okay, I was reading this as if they had to leave them in the locker.
No.
Just don't leave them at school.
Right, just don't leave them overnight.
then we need to reword this, because it says backpacks may be brought, but must be kept in lockers at the middle school and high school.
What we can do, we can reword that, say backpacks may be brought, but if they're kept in the lockers, they must be taken home each night or whatever, something
You
like
know, when
that.
we initially discussed it, that was what was decided when the committee initially discussed that, was that they would have to keep them in
During the day.
lockers during the day, but if that's not practical, then certainly that can be
Is
changed.
that something that?
We can if that's what.
I'm not saying one way or another, but
No,
you're giving me different information
Yeah,
than
I
I'm
was-
reading here.
I think we have.
My
a lot of
concern
lockers.
is if we're gonna make them keep everything in their locker, you know, a lot of kids say that, you know, do we need to lengthen the time between classes where they have time, you know, cause I think the reason a lot of the kids carry their bags is because they can just go
Yeah.
from class to class.
And we're not linked, I mean, that's part of this is shortening that time, so.
Right.
I don't know that it's, I mean, that's your personal effect, you're keeping it on you. I don't know that that's contrary to anything that we're.
Does he
we're
come in
doing.
contact with anyone else?
Ideally, no.
Well, the other thing too, and this is for the middle school as well, how many of our kids don't actually use their lockers?
Yeah, in high school, it's about half, probably.
Most of mine do,
They do use
truly
their
they
lockers.
do, yes. I don't know why they get out of that between middle and high school, but pretty much, I'd say 98% of mine use their lockers.
So keep it as is and have them keep it in their lockers?
I'm fine with that, if that's
Okay.
the will of.
Well, we just need to do whatever this is gonna say.
Doesn't that, I mean, we're doing the quick transition, right? That's
Yeah,
what we're looking for here. We're gonna make them all go back to their lockers in between each class and move it. I mean, it's just, we're creating something that,
That's putting them more together than if they just kept their backpack with them.
I mean, you guys are the experts in seeing this or what's
Well,
happening
we have
here, what's.
a great distance to travel for a lot of our kids for classes, so we could easily put a proviso in here for high school.
A lot of my kids, because our lockers aren't really standard size at the middle school, we kind of have odds and ends. And in the 5th grade, we have cubbies that are open. The 5th grade can keep them in there and it's no problem, but some of them carry such huge backpacks, the doors won't shut. So we have hooks up and down all of our hallways, and a lot of them will keep their backpack on their hook. And so they keep some of their stuff in their locker, and you know, they'll go visit their backpack then. The big thing is they really need to take it home, because the custodians are going to be wiping everything down, and we really need them to not be leaving anything that's a material that cleaning would be difficult with that.
But
so,
you don't have a concern with congregating or that extended time moving in between classes with your group?
You know, I do have a concern with that. You know, we only have 4 minutes between classes, and we will be in the hallways keeping them moving, but you know, we have 400 students in the building, and we're going to just keep them moving the best we can. But you know, our lockers are top bottom, so are the high school. So we're going to do the best we can. We encourage mask wearing, and you know, we'll do the best we can with social distancing. But the big thing is just take the backpack home at the end of the day, so we can clean really, really good.
So you don't have a concern with them leaving them in their lockers? For making them leave them in their, I'm asking you, I don't see
No,
what's happening.
most of mine in my building don't take them to their classroom. They hang them in the hook on the hall, and a lot of the teachers don't like them bringing them into the classrooms, and that's a safety issue too.
But Marty, you think that it'd be better at the high school level to allow them to take them, or not?
In an ideal world, no, but yes, when we're trying to get quickly, then yes. Now, we have the same teachers that a lot of them will line them up in the hallway before they go into the class.
I just know my problem is, I don't have a problem if this is what we're gonna do, but that's not what I've heard you guys
Sure.
say, is that they must leave them in their locker through the day, so.
No,
I
it
don't
sounds
care
like-
which way we
it
fall, here, but
sounds-
we need to fall one way or
Now,
another.
it sounds like basically you would like to see them have the ability to move them
I
back
would.
and forth. You would rather just keep them where they are.
You know, it truly, it does not matter to me if they want to take them, as long as the teacher allows them in the classroom. We don't let them stack them in the hallways outside teacher doors, because we have hooks in our building. We have hooks in every.
Then why don't we
hallway,
just, then
so.
to solve this issue, why don't we just
Cause
strike,
that's
just
something that
strike,
would fall back on a teacher, even if we didn't have,
Yeah,
if we knew nothing
take it
about.
out.
strike that one,
Comma.
just strike that one clause. Just
Right.
Yeah.
where it says,
But must be kept in lockers at the middle school and high school, just take that out.
Scratch that out.
Must-
Backpacks may be brought and must go home at the end of each day. Then building can do whatever they need to do, right?
All right.
That's great.
Perfect.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Anything else under that? Sanitation protocols, we're doing everything we can to get all the things ordered that we have to have, the resources that we need, the cleaning supplies. Working with the trained custodians at what do we mean by deep cleaning? It's not like we've always done. We'll have an additional custodian on duty, I've already shared. We're gonna continue to sanitize our classrooms, our desks, daily. We're gonna sanitize our desks, we're eating in the classroom part of the time, so we're gonna sanitize our desks after each meal. Playground equipment, check the guidelines. Playground equipment can be used, again, it's outside. Providing light, actually a good thing as far as keeping the virus, but we're still gonna sanitize any areas where hands are touching every day.
So like the playground equipment, will we
They can use
sanitize, how do you do that? How do you sanitize that playground equipment?
They have chemicals to do it.
Okay.
They spray and wipe it down. Right now. And we actually have, if we ever get them in, we would have to do it that way first, spray and wipe it down. Because eventually we're gonna get these electrostatic guns where you just spray them. And they let them sit. So. Student transportation.
I'm sorry, Bill, before you move on, I just wanna point out that the playground equipment was a change from the CDC from summer school to seated school. Because they told summer school that we couldn't play on the playground equipment. And now with, I'm gonna assume more information, they've decided that outside equipment is safe to play on. So I just wanted to make
Yeah, it is. And if you go by there right now, you'll see a fence all the way around it. So, but we'll pull that down, they'll be able to use it, so. Student transportation, for opening clause there, it's gonna be very difficult, obviously, with social distancing for student transportation. But it is highly recommended that parents provide students their own transportation. If they have any concerns with riding in a school bus, they can always bring their own kids to school, there's nothing wrong with it. Again, we want them to screen their kids when they get on the bus. We are gonna load the bus from the back front, we have a seating chart on the bus as well, so that we know if there's a positive, we can tell whoever needs to know who that kid is sitting next to, or around that kid. And we are going to clean our buses daily as well with those electrostatic guns. Any questions about transportation?
With say you get a certain percentage of parents that are like, yeah, I'll let my kid come to school, but I'm not letting them ride the bus. Do we have anything in place for when the 300,000 of them are congregated out in front of the middle school every morning? How they do, just piled up on each other before you open the doors.
I'm on the playground every morning and I have staff out there with me and, we can encourage social distancing, but literally a lot of mornings before we turn them into the building at 7:45, there are 200 kids out there. And yes, they're touching each other and they're hugging each other and, that's where the parents just really need to talk to the students about keep your distance. This is important. And this is all temporary, and that's the point that I'm going to keep making with the students is, next year you'll be able to hug your friend again, but this year let's put some space between us. But it is what it is. We have the facilities we have the space that we have, and we will do our very best to encourage them to give us some room, but, there's 200 of them out there at a time, so yeah, we'll do our best is what I can say. We will do our very best.
Anything else about transportation? Robert's here if you have any questions at all.
social distancing on a bus. You said there were the electrostatic, we have those for the buses now, correct?
Well, no, we don't.
We don't have any of those
We're
machines.
doing it by hand now with spray bottles.
Okay, and so we don't have any of those machines right now, those machines won't be available until.
We're gonna get, I told Josh to order enough for each building to have a couple, so we're gonna try to get 8 of them total. But one will be just for the transportation part, one or two for each building.
I assume those are probably fairly costly.
About $1,500 a piece.
Now, every custodian is gonna have one.
Yes. I mean, eventually, once we get them.
Right.
And we might actually get more than, every custodian will have one.
Locker rooms.
Yeah, correct. And see, we had one down at the gym, but it was broken, it's not, we're still trying to get parts to fix it. And I think we had that, I think we must have gotten that before I came here, because I think we had our outbreak or something.
Yeah, but it was staff, but it wasn't a high, it's not like what we're getting, it was a wet one, and it was wet. And,
Okay.
it was a fogger, but not as good as we're getting.
So yeah, I mean, if we can ever get them, that's the problem, they're just on back orders, so. Breakfast,
Yeah,
what?
almost like everybody wants.
Oh, yeah. I know. Oh, that's the other thing, you know, 3 weeks ago, we were good on bottle filling machines. Now Josh can't get any, because everybody's coming to the conclusion, we don't need water fountains, we need bottle filling machines. So all these things are back ordered, it's just hard to get everything right now. I have Gina here, and then she can answer any questions as far as breakfast and lunch, that's kind of a lengthy conversation about how to do that. And a lot of that, quite honestly, was a conversation between Regina and each of the building principals on how we can maintain social distancing and still feed all our kids. In a nutshell, high school is still gonna do their grab and go breakfast. They started doing that last year. I think it was relatively successful, so they'll continue to do that. They'll get their breakfast and go on their way. We are planning on doing lunch at the high school in the bear time classrooms, which kind of helped us out with the elementary school in terms of scheduling. And so that's kind of how we're gonna do it starting out, as long as we're in level 2. As far as the middle school is concerned, Tina believes that there's enough space there to be able to social distance in Grimes, correct?
We're going to, we won't be using salad bar this year, and we're going to utilize that lower part where we usually don't keep tables. So we're going to put more tables in there and fewer chairs around them. I hate those big round tables when you're trying to do events in there, but I love them for this because you have a lot of space between kids if you only have 5 chairs to a table. Hands off of food, absolutely no sharing of food, no trading food from tray to tray. So, you know, we have extra supervision during lunch this year. So we're going to do our best to monitor that. And I think we can, I feel like, and I hope Regina agrees that we can do that safely. I really think so.
How many grades do we have in there at once?
We only have 1 grade at a time, and our biggest grade this year, I think, is right around 100. 3 of them are right around 100. Our 5th grade is small this year. But we're going to only put the number of chairs that we need in there to suit our biggest grade, so that, you know, they're kind of limited. They're going to have to sit 5 to a table, and we don't let them move chairs anyway. You can't drag 10 chairs to a table and crowd in with all your friends. We make them keep them where they are. So
Are you gonna have a seating chart?
we are not going to start with a seating chart. I'm not going to say we won't end up. Our rule has always been when you go in and sit down for lunch, you have to stay at that table. You stay in your seat. You know, you can get up and use the restroom if you need to or whatever, but we don't let them just get up and switch from table to table during lunch. And they all know that. So we'll just try to keep it to sit down, but, you know, sit with the people you sit with. Don't tell people they can't sit with you, and eat your lunch. And we did shorten the lunch periods just a little bit this year. They were too long last year, and with adding our advisory period, so they're just going to have to get in there and eat, and then we'll send them outside for recess. So.
How long is that?
I think all of the lunches are right at 20 minutes, and that's from the bell that releases them from class to the time that they will go either to advisory or recess. And everyone has a recess this year. We shortened those a little bit again, but every grade level has about a 12-minute recess, which is enough time to go out, play a little basketball, and blow off a little steam. I found that last year the 7th and 8th graders really needed that. I would take them out after they finished eating because lunch was too long, and we would go outside for just a few minutes, and they need that. So we have lunch, advisory, recess for all the grades this year. So, but I really think that we can do that. We can keep them hands off each other. If not, we will do like the high school, where we'll do lunch in the classrooms if we feel like it's not working.
Virginia, you wanna talk a little bit about elementary, how that's going? I know what we're doing at the high school is freed up more time where Mr. C was able to put in another lunch period, is that correct?
Yeah, he's only gonna do 1 grade per lunch session. So we'll start at 10:40 and we'll go all the way to 12:35 on lunches. So 1 grade will come in at a time, and it's 25 minutes for each lunch in the elementary school.
And they will still start at the same time they normally start?
Yep. Normally it's at 10:40, and before we would have several classes in there at a time, 2 and 3 classes in there at a time. And this year we're only doing 1 class at a time. So we'll go through the hour from 11 to noon, continuing to serve kids. And with Marty changing his stuff up, it just kind of freed everybody up so we could break it down for the elementary school.
1 class or 1 grade?
I'm sorry, yeah, one grade level,
So roughly 100 kids
roughly.
will be in there at one time.
Well, that's at pre-COVID levels, right? I mean,
No,
no. I mean, if 60% of the people aren't gonna send their kids to school, and we've got 100 in the cohort, we're gonna start with 85.
That's true,
right?
that's true, that is.
Right
Well,
now in
I-
summer school,
It may not be 100, it may be something, it may be a small amount.
right now in summer school, we're doing roughly 80 kids that are coming in and setting, and we're doing really well with keeping the kids social distancing at all of the tables. It's working out very nicely.
And you're doing about 80.
About 80, yeah, that are sitting in there at a time.
If you got 20 more, would it be that big of a problem?
I don't think so, because when you look at it, we're only using like 3 rows of tables, and there's still 2 extra over there. So when this group leaves, the custodians come in and clean it, and then the next group comes in and they go to those other 2 tables. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
So it kind of works.
And then I know we're also having the custodians clean all the tables after each
Yep.
meal.
Right.
After each group leaves,
Mhm.
before the next group comes in. So,
Yes, I think it'll work nicely.
but I think you're right, Dean, that 100's based on the assumption that 100% of people come. So yeah, maybe smaller.
We would
Any-
still have the white tables too, if we needed to, that are over there to the
Correct.
side. So, and those aren't being used other than by teachers right now. So there's room for more.
So there was something else I was gonna say.
Let me just
Go
ask the
ahead.
same question, but we're not requiring a seating order. My concern is only contact tracing,
So if they came
if
in,
they're allowed to sit wherever they want to.
if they, in elementary, if they come in with their class, their teacher puts them at their table, like as they get their meal, their teacher sits them down, so they're not gonna sit with,
So they're gonna sit with their cohort class.
yes.
That's good.
Nora, our students mix around during the day anyway.
Yeah,
They're
right,
never in
yeah,
the same
yeah.
classroom. We can always look on our cameras and see, okay, so who were they sitting with?
Oh,
at lunch?
yeah,
And,
of course,
You know,
Sure.
we've got 3 cameras in Grimes.
Right.
Ours will actually have a seating chart because they're just gonna bleed over from their 2nd and 6th block class. We'll just turn it into bear time and lunch.
Right.
I think contact tracing would be easier for the younger kids.
Easier.
Yeah, it'd be easier for the younger kids. The
Because
older
they don't,
kids
because they
are-
don't rotate around.
That's right, and they're mobile, and yeah, it's gonna be more difficult.
Except with kids in specials maybe.
Correct. Yeah, but they still go as a cohort class, I think, to specials. They do, don't they?
I
Yeah,
think
Robbie
they
will,
do.
sure. Yeah, so they still save the class. Anything else for meals, breakfast, and lunch? Alright, let's move on to all important athletics and activities. And I know there's no questions about that. So, Misha has released some guidelines and they're like recommendations. We're trying to, I had a meeting with the league suits today, we're trying to be consistent, but I think without trying to be consistent, we're consistent. Cause it's almost like everyone's doing the same things in terms of camps and nobody's doing overnight trips or anything like that. These are just a few of the items that we put in turn, as long as we're in level 2, we're not looking at any overnight trips. They leave Willow, they come back to Willow same day. We don't need kids staying in hotels right now. We are equipping all of our coaches with thermometers. It was a recommendation, maybe even a requirement from Misha that coaches check their kids' temperature before every practice. So we will equip all of our coaches with infrared thermometers.
Bring it each team, one, not every coach, but each team
Okay,
will have.
very good. I think we ordered like 10 for the sports programs, right? We're not drinking from communal fountains, so we're doing bottles. All the athletes will be drinking out of bottles, but bottle filling machines for them as well. Did you have a question, Dean?
Yeah, so we're actually going to screen temperatures prior to each practice? I mean, that's an absolute?
It's not a requirement, it's a recommendation. We're gonna do it starting out.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Oftentimes, if we do travel to a location, another school district, especially those around Springfield, their requirements more than likely will be different than ours. And so for that reason, we will always follow the requirements of the school district we go to. So if they require masking, our kids are going mask. And I think we're looking at ordering masks for our athletes, or not, Robert?
Yeah, I talked to Michelle and Ashley a little bit about it. Kind of what we're gonna do, the coaches are gonna talk to the teams and encourage them to, we think they can come up with a mask if we need to. If they can't, we're gonna go see them and they're gonna get us some. There's a good chance that we may travel somewhere where, they've gotta wear a mask while they're in and out of facilities up until the point of playing ball, coaches, officials, the whole deal. So we're not requiring it, preparing that we may go somewhere that is.
You go to Springfield, you know.
Right, and we do, you know.
So we had doing some camps or some ball where people that were sitting in the stands were expected to wear masks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the kind of way it is right now. You know, some of our boys went up to Nixon and they required it.
So much about athletics and activities, though, it's gonna be kind of going, figured out as we go. I mean, there's already conversations out there about spectators and no spectators. They've had conversations there. Misha has some guidelines on that. You know, Misha's developed these tiers where one tier is just media and officials only, game officials only. And there's another tier that has just parents maybe, or another tier that has all spectators. So we're not there yet. I mean, we're not even contemplating that at this point in time. None of the SCA schools are. You know, we're just, a lot of it's gonna be governed by what happens at school, and then we'll follow along with our activities. But if there is no school, if we close school due to COVID-19, there will be no activities. There will be no athletics, practices, or anything else. And so if we have to have a 2-week closure or a month closure because of this, then everything stops, except for instruction. Instruction will continue, right?
Yes.
It takes us right into our next line. Any questions on activities or athletics or anything?
I got just one question. I was able to sit in the meeting where we're talking about the thermometer, and there's certain protocol or certain time frames that can throw that off from coming in, out, inside and outside. Is everybody being trained? I mean, I know it seems simple to run a thermometer, but do you guys have protocol and everybody's being informed how to do it so we don't get false readings or?
We've given each summer school teacher an infrared thermometer. We've taught them on how to use it. Janet got us in front of teachers meeting, showed them all how to do it. When I get the ones in for the coaches, they're required to come to the nurse's office. I'll give them, put gloves in on it, they'll sign it out, they'll sign it back in at the end of their season, and then we will move on to fall toddler.
So there is training then?
Yeah.
You said no activities, no athletic activities when there's no school. Is that level 3 or level 4?
Well, that would be.
Or both?
Well, if we have to close school at all, I mean, complete closure, then that's gonna be, we're not having it. It'll be level 3 or 4.
So level 3,
Well,
there's actually kids in the school receiving instruction.
There could be, but.
But athletics is
level
closed.
3 would run it.
Okay, that's what I
If
wanted.
it's serious enough that we have to close school, we're not doing athletics.
All right.
And that would be
Just
counterproductive.
a thing on that, Mish's rule on that is if you offer a seated instruction, you can continue activities per your health department. It's a local decision. If you offer 2 days a week of seated instruction and the rest of the time it's virtual, you can still have athletics activities. That they're not saying you can't. You just have to offer some sort of seated instruction. That's a district call.
Right. And our position on this is that if we have any type of school closure, it could be very possible we may have to close the elementary school, not the middle school and high school. All right. But if it is so serious that we have that many kids that are missing because of COVID at the elementary school, more than likely siblings have been exposed as well. So yeah, my position on that is there will be no athletics. If it's serious enough to close school, it's serious enough not to have athletics. So I would 3 or 4. Okay, now, I'll turn it back to the instruction. I'm gonna kind of turn it over to Chris and he can let you know what he's been up to the last couple of weeks.
Okay. I'm deviating from the plan because I'm going from from the plan I've drawn up for just the academic piece in itself. And first of all, AMI, or Alternative Methods of Instruction, that came about in the 2019 year of the legislative session, and that was intended for the bill that that became law was intended for schools that went under the required number of hours due to snow days, and now it's kind of morphed into COVID outbreaks, and we have AMI and then AMI extended. AMI basically, according to the state, is basically is based around individuals who are out of class for an extended period due to COVID. Okay, and like I said, the original intent was for inclement weather beyond our built-in days. And then AMI extended is where a district or school is out of session
for an extended period of time due to COVID. As Mr. Hall explained a while ago, we can go AMI extended or what we call AMI X if the elementary is completely out of school, but the other two buildings aren't. So so it's AMIX could look a little bit different from school or from district to district or within our district as a whole. Okay, so what we're looking at is just providing instruction during these periods. Okay, alternative methods of instruction, and it doesn't have to be virtual. It doesn't have to be distance learning. Virtual learning is usually provided by a secondary provider like Launch is one of our virtual provider for the district. But distance learning is where our teachers provide instruction for students who are away from school. Okay, and that's what we're working on. What I'm working on with our teachers right now. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, we got together an AMI curriculum team. We had an initial meeting to kind of discuss the plan of how we were going to provide instruction to our students, what methods we could possibly use, and we also discussed the fact that no matter what we provide, our teachers are expected to collect some sort of work, whether it's through our Canvas program, which is our online learning management tool, or they could provide. There may be some units or some grade levels that they can't help but send home paper packets. I mean, the lessons just aren't compatible with electronic learning. So we discussed those items. We started meeting this week. And on Monday of this week, we actually got together. We looked over our electronic tool, looked over Canvas. We went through and each of these members represent a grade level or a department in one of the three buildings. So we have about 5 to 6 members per building. I think we have 17 or 18 total on the team. And their job is to receive the training to use Canvas. Many of our teachers that are on the team already know how to use it. Some of them have never touched it, and so we met the other day to kind of teach each other how to use Canvas. And so our teachers that were very experienced went to the ones that were not and worked with them, and it was a very good couple hours of training. And now, starting yesterday, several of our teams have gotten together, and those lead teachers that were in our training on Monday have been working with the other teachers to provide training for them and help develop their units of instruction in Canvas. Okay. Now on Monday of next week, we're going to have a representative from RPDC in Rolla, who is also a member of our Missouri Model District grant team, to provide instructional strategies for virtual learning. And it's going to be pretty much 3 different components, and so we're going to receive that training Monday morning. And then for our teachers who have been on vacation or are going to be on vacation, we're providing catch-up sessions. As a matter of fact, I've already had 2 virtual sessions with people who are on vacation and talking about what we've done the last couple of sessions and trying to maybe calm some fears a little bit, address some concerns, and there still are, and we're still coming up with things that we didn't think about in the first meeting that could not really fully derail our system, but maybe a little bit of a barrier to us providing instruction. So our training, like on Monday, our instructor is actually going to wear a microphone, and we're going to have a camera that automatically pivots back and forth, and we're going to record that instruction, not only provide it for our leaders who are not going to be here, but it will also be available for all of our teachers through our shared drives. So as I mentioned a while ago, they're going to work with their teams to support development of electronic curriculum. So I've also I went over our schedule. We're PD next Monday. They're going to work with their teams on their own, and then we have a professional development day built into our calendar on August 19th, and we're going to devote at least part of our day to developing units of instruction. And so our expectation is that on day one, if we have somebody that is either that's tested, or if we have somebody that's tested positive, they're on quarantine, we're ready to provide that instruction. That's pretty much it for my.
Any questions about the AMI or what the approach is all about?
Yeah, I have a question. How do we account for ADA on AMI?
If they are going to be, if they're just out temporarily, like they're going to miss 10 days, we can actually mark them as homebound, and as long as we provide 5 hours of instruction, we get full credit for for their attendance.
And do we have a plan to do that?
Yes. I mean, it's going to look very much like if they're normally absent, except the delivery system will be on campus unless, there's a connectivity issue or something that will provide paper packets.
Any sense of what it's gonna do to our ADA, this change in how we present?
Actually, there is. DESE's position on this is they're not giving any relief due to attendance this upcoming year if you have something to do with COVID-19 school closing or something. If you have the school closing, or if you have a large group of kids that you have to exclude, say an entire second grade classroom, right? That's where AMI-X goes into place. They count that a COVID-related reason, and they're going to basically hold you harmless on those kids that are gone at that time. The kids that just come in because they have to be excluded 14 days, we place them on homebound, and we count that ADA like we normally count. DESE's perception on this is we know your attendance will probably be less, but 95% of the school districts in the state of Missouri are either using the first preceding year or the second preceding year attendance anyway. So they said it's not going to hurt you because you're going to fall back on last year's attendance anyway. So that's DESE's position. So they're not going to give hold arm, they're not going to give breaks necessarily. They'll hold you harmless if you have to get a lot of kids out at one time. The rest of them just put them on homebound and treat them like you normally do. And track your ADA up.
Until it's safe for them to come back to school.
I've got a question. You talked about some teachers being versed in Canvas and some not being versed in it. Is that reflective of the students as well? And if so, is there gonna be any kind of training in advance in case there is a shutdown? So when these kids are sitting at the house, we're not trying to figure out how to turn the Chromebook on and do all that, which my kids are way ahead of me on all that stuff.
The expectation is that every classroom is going to have, within their seated classes, is going to have some sort of experience within the normal school day in campus.
So they'll prepare before.
Yes. And I haven't developed it yet, but my goal by the first day of school is to have some sort of instructional video. I'll probably post it on YouTube or something that will give parents some sort of tutorial on how to help their students in Canvas and not do the work for them.
How will exclusion affect attendance requirements? How does that interplay together? I assume the students have attendance requirements.
Well, yeah, they'll still be counted as absent. But if it's a large group, I don't think it's going to affect it at all. If it's homebound, we don't count them as absent, do we?
No, they're marked as homebound, and then we'll report it to DESE that way at the end of the year. But as long as they are receiving at least 5 hours of instruction per week, we get to claim full attendance on those students, and that's true any year.
And they get to claim attendance as well.
With the school, so it counts for DESE and it counts
Yes.
in the school.
And that's where the AMI-X comes, because we had to apply. And Chris actually submitted an application to DESE for this because they had to approve it. Both the AMI, which was first in place because of the weather-related closing, then AMI-X, which they put in place for the COVID-19 reasons. We had to apply for that and they have to approve a plan. They haven't approved it yet. We expect to hear something back relatively soon. But the purpose of the AMI is so you have a mechanism in place so you can capture that attendance. And the only way you can do that is if you continue to provide instruction. And so that's the purpose of it. So if we have a large group of kids gone, as long as we can document that we have AMI in place, that we're doing distance learning through Canvas, then that'll protect that attendance, all right? If we decide to do nothing, and they said that's certainly your option, you don't have to do anything if you don't want. But they made it very, very clear that you will not get any funding if you don't provide instruction. You have to be able to document that you're reaching out to those kids and there's some accountability going on.
So it's safe to say that if that form that comes from the nurse's office that starts the exclusion goes to the building level, that's when AMI will begin for that child? Yes. Okay.
Now, and then the other question that came up, and this is where it gets a little tricky, it kind of goes to your point about how many kids are coming back, right? So let's take a grade level. I'll take fourth grade. I don't know how many kids are in fourth grade. Say there's 104. And at some point in time, you know, that's 5 sections, right? Say 100's a round number. 5 sections, 100's 20 a section, right? We have a designated virtual person at each grade level. Now, I know they're going to share the load in terms of developing lessons across the grade level, but we're going to have one that's responsible for delivering the virtual instruction. Now, then you said, okay, now that person's going to have a seated class and they're going to be doing the virtual. Well, if you think about the numbers, if the numbers go down, it's very conceivable kids may need to move around. And so because now all of a sudden, if you have only 80 kids in there because 20 of them are excluded, then you may only need 4 sections. And so then one would focus just on the virtual instruction and the other 4 would split the 80 kids. So you try to do that as efficient as possible to maintain continuity of instruction, to do that.
We really want to do that as a last resort, though. I mean, that's
well, it's not good to move kids from teacher to teacher. Right. But if we had to, in an emergency. Anything else on AMI? It's still a work in progress, but visiting with Chris, he feels fairly comfortable that when school starts August 24th, we'll be ready to roll that one out. We offer distance learning first, and then we also offer launch if they're interested in launch as another option for virtual, but we'd rather do it in-house with distance learning. Okay, questions? Then the last item is just virtual connectivity, and we talked about that a little bit. I'm working with Facility on that to acquire hotspots. We'll know more if we have to deliver the distance learning. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. If child A needs it, okay, what are the limitations? What are the barriers? Do you have Wi-Fi connectivity? Yeah, you're good to go. Do you have cell phone connectivity but no Wi-Fi? Yeah, I got US Cellular. I'm close to US Cellular now. Great, take this hotspot. You're good to go. Or do you have access to anything? No. We're looking at options right now, and Facility is on locating places where we can put an access point and get it closer to them. The other option, and that would keep them from having to drive 10 miles to town. They might be able to drive a mile down the road and get their stuff, get their homework downloaded or whatever. We are looking at providing Chromebooks if they need Chromebooks. We have plenty of Chromebooks to do that. I know everybody's edgy about sending Chromebooks home, but the old saying is, what the necessity is the mother of invention. There's a silver lining here, all right? When all this goes away, and it will go away eventually, or we'll learn to live with it, one or the other. But we do have another option now to provide virtual instruction to kids down the road. And this could be the segue to a true one-to-one program where you send computers home to kids. Now, I've never done it for elementary kids. That's a stretch, right? I've done it with high school, some middle school, but elementary is going to be a stretch. But if we do that, then we will have a loan agreement that they will complete. And subject to that, if there's damages, they're going to be responsible for that as well. But we're not going to give them connectivity, we're not giving them a device to access it. That's just silly. And so we'll figure that out as well. Any questions on, I mean, there's a lot of information here. Any questions about anything at this point in time related to the plan?
I got one, Bill, back on page 9. The self-quarantine. If a student or employee has recently had close contact with a person with symptoms or diagnosed, the self-quarantine. Is there any control of that, or can you just, a parent or somebody says one day, well, I just don't want to send my kids back to school, I want to do lunch or however, and this is my opportunity to do so. Is there any control?
I mean, we've got to take them at their word. I mean, if they say, hey, I think I was exposed, we're not going to say, well, no, you weren't. Get back there and go to school. No, I mean, there isn't really any control. We just want people to be straightforward.
See, this is opportunity being misused.
It's possible. I mean, I don't think we can create a plan that's gonna close all the loopholes. I think it really truly requires a partnership with our parents, a collaboration, and they have, it's all about education of the kids, the safety and health of their kids, and the education of the kids as well. You know, if they work with us, I think we've got a solid plan here, but yeah, could there be some folks that aren't truthful? Sure.
I mean, 'cause
That can happen in any stage of
back
life.
with the HIPAA and all this,
Yeah, I know.
because they can't say blah, 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 blah,
I
blah.
know. I know.
And do we have enough substitutes in line ready to go?
Well, that's the big question. And the answer to that is no.
No.
We don't. No, we don't.
Plenty of bus drivers though, don't.
Lots of bus
We're,
drivers.
we're gaining more by the day. I just tell you. I think Robert's like, he's like walking in tall cotton right now, cause he's like, man, I'm getting bus drivers coming in left and right.
Be quiet, they might be listening.
I'm
lucky to have one.
Oh, they may not, they may not. I got you.
We got some good ones.
Do we know how much extended time in the mornings all this is maybe gonna take?
How much extended time in the mornings?
Yeah, getting kids lined up and getting, how much is it gonna add in the morning before we can actually sit down and start?
And have school.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's gonna take the first few days, it's gonna be
Sure.
like any first few days of school. We just gotta get in a pattern and figure it out, and the kids will learn. And they'll, you know, kids are pretty resilient. They'll figure it out, they'll follow that. But yeah, the first few days, it's just like the bus routes on the first day. I mean, they're kind of crazy, you know, and that's been everywhere I've been because everybody's just trying to figure it out. This isn't gonna be any different because we're doing that, plus we're implementing this as well. So yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of time to do that until we get it in place.
What exactly are the restrictions on parents and visitors?
At this point, they're not allowed to come and visit their child or have lunch with kids. We're not allowing really any outside visitations for students in the building.
But there will be substitute teachers who will come in and work if
Yes.
necessary. Okay.
Yeah, and I have a choice there. If we can find it.
Well, so, an elementary parent comes, I mean, they'll be allowed to come to the office.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, they'll be able to come and say, hey, could you get this to, Jimmy? Or they may have to come check them out, take them to the doctor. Yeah, just, we'll go get her, bring her, and off you go.
And I have to make my 5 trips a week up.
For my 5 trips. That's about ready to run out, isn't it?
Just about.
Just about. All right. Anything else? At all? Regarding the plan, regarding the next, communication is the next step. And I'm glad that you're here this evening, Matt, because this helps a lot. You know, let's get it out in the paper. That's a good thing. I do plan on releasing this tomorrow if the board approves it. We'll put the entire document on our district Facebook page as well as on our district website. And then we also have this document that we created just as talking points for parents. And we're just kind of thinking not everyone's going to read the 15-page version. And so we just try to highlight the main points in this one. This will be on the Facebook page as well as on our website. And we'll hand these out at the back to school night when school starts in August. So this might be a whole lot easier on parents' eyes than this. So, but that's the plan to communicate it. So it will be out official tomorrow. And then really official next Tuesday. All right? Okay. Any questions about anything else?
Well, just one more comment. First I want to say how much I appreciate all the work that has been put into this and everything you guys have done and what you've got, you know, ahead of you. I can't imagine the phone calls you'll get and the different scenarios you'll have to deal with. And the other, I guess I had 2 comments. My other comment is, from my understanding, the virus is a lot more easily transmitted through the air than it is on surfaces. And we're doing a whole lot of stuff, we're making a lot of effort to clean surfaces. And I just hope we encourage people to wear masks, you know, and, you know, as much as we're cleaning surfaces. Because that can probably make a bigger difference if we get, you know, if it's in the area. That'll make a bigger difference in the transmission than cleaning bus seats and everything else. And I know you will, but I just want to say that I think that's, you know, I understand why we're not requiring masks. That's you know, I can't imagine how hard that would be. But I think that they are important, and especially in, you know, in circumstances where kids are going to be close, and teachers, protecting teachers also. And I know some rooms don't have the best ventilation. And ventilation is an important factor also, so doing everything we can, which I'm sure that they are, in assuring that. That's my 2 cents worth.
You know, one thing about the plan, and even after the board approves it, it's still a work in progress.
No.
Because we really don't know what we don't know at this point in time, and I may be back to you in a month and saying, we need to require a bedroom mat. I mean, we may be there, we don't know. Right now, we feel comfortable where we are, you know, but that could change.
I think that's the one thing we can guarantee people is things will change, because we don't know what's gonna happen.
I had the opportunity to, sort of watch the sausage being made on this one. And I gotta tell you, my hat's off to everybody who worked on it. I appreciate all your input. I mean, I appreciate you guys took it very seriously. The health and well-being of children of this community. I really appreciate that.
That was I had a phone call from a parent, and that was one of their concerns, is that it was just this, lackadaisical, we don't need masks, we don't, go on back and forth, whatever, and you being able to sit in that first meeting, and then get to make it to the other ones there, but I assured them of that same thing, and so I think that was helpful to that parent to know that, how everybody's taking it up here and treating the health of the kids.
Very well. Any other questions tonight? With that, I'd ask for a motion to approve the, district reopening plan with, do we make one change?
Yeah,
with one modification.
I like that motion.
I'll second. Motion by Dean, second by Adams. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Very well. That's all you have for tonight, Bill?
Yep, that's it.
All right, I receive a motion to adjourn. Second? Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Stay here. So, Colonel, second is who made the motion? Right. Okay, guys.
There's always a quick motion.
Yeah.
Good.
You guys will never stop me. If I could.
When you're on,
Spend a lot of time catching.
See you, man.
We were just talking about.